Hello again, everyone. In this video, we're going to take a look at, let's get my pen working here. We are going to take a look at something called ARCHIVELOG mode. And ARCHIVELOG mode is a way of running your database so that all of the online redo logs are saved off. You have to be running an ARCHIVELOG mode if you're going to do hot backups or if you're going to use RMAN. You absolutely have to be running in ARCHIVELOG mode. There's no way around it. What does ARCHIVELOG mode really do? Inside your Oracle database, as transactions go through the system, Oracle does a lot of processing on the data before it actually writes it out to the data files. You may think that you do a command, let's say in SQL Plus, you hit commit, boom, you hit enter. Oracle just takes that information, throws it out to the data files. That's not really how it works. Oracle does a lot of processing to try to optimize the data as much as possible inside the Oracle engine. Not only on the data itself, but it batches a lot of that information together before it writes it out to disk. Oracle tries to go out to disk as few times as it possibly can because going out to disk is a very expensive thing for the database to do. So Oracle is optimized to do as much stuff in memory as it possibly can before it writes stuff out to disk. But the downside to that is, excuse me, if something happens to your database, we never want to be in a situation where we have, part of a transaction that's in the database and part of the transaction that's not. So Oracle maintains these things called online redo log files. And the online redo logs, you can think of these as maintaining kind of a raw format of the data that's been committed inside of a database. Oracle writes to these in a cyclical manner, so there has to be at least two online redo logs. And what most DBAs do is they set this up so that there's three different online redo logs. Call these guys 1, 2, and 3. So Oracle is writing the raw information out to these files. As one of these files fills up, then it goes to the next one, then it goes to the next one. If I'm not in ARCHIVELOG mode, Oracle just overwrites these files over and over again. And it gives a way of, like I said, making sure that transaction, if there's a power failure or something catastrophic happens in your database, we never want to have a situation where part of the transaction's in the database and part of it isn't. And by having this raw information inside the online redo logs, if a catastrophic thing does occur when Oracle starts up again, it's smart enough to go, hey, wait a minute, I have these transactions that were committed in the database, but I don't see them in the data files. I'm going to look in the online redo logs. Oh, okay, I see them in the online redo logs. I'll sort of pick these guys up and then write them out to the actual data files. I'll just call this DF for Oracle data file. Oracle will catch up and do that. But like I said, it's run in a cyclical manner, so they just overwrite over and over again. That's no ARCHIVELOG mode. When I go into ARCHIVELOG mode, Oracle still does the same thing here, but every time I leave one of these online redo logs, let's say I fill up number 1 and I go to read number 2, there's a process called an archiver that grabs this file and writes it out to an archive directory. And this might be C archive, or if you're on Linux, it might be U01 archive or something like that. This gives me the flexibility of saying, okay, if something bad happens in my database and I need to recover a lot of transactions, I can do that. I can go to this archive directory and start looking through all of these archive files and recover my database. In the video we talked about on doing hot backups, when we do a hot backup, we basically take the data file offline while we're backing it up. Well, all those transactions that are still potentially going against that data file have to go somewhere. They can't just go into limbo. They're held in the online redo logs. Transactions go through. They're written to the archive directory. Once I finish backing up finished with a particular data file in my hot backup, and that file comes online again, all of the transactions that I missed while I was backing up that data file are in my archive directory files, and the Oracle database engine is smart enough to say, oh, I missed all of these, so let me go to the archive directory and start getting all of these different files. Same thing comes true with a recovery. if I've backed up my database on a Friday, let's say, and something happens the following Wednesday, my database crashes, how do I recover my database? Well, I go to that hot backup that I did on Friday, I restore all of those files, and then I start applying all the transactions that are in my archive directory, everything for Saturday, everything for Sunday, everything for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I can catch up. And once I've applied all of those archive files, my database should be at the point of where it was right before there was a failure that shut down my database. Once I've applied all of those files, everything's in sync. I can then start up my database and I've recovered everything. So archive log mode is a little bit more work to kind of set up and maintain. You obviously have to watch these directories to make sure that they don't fill up. If they do fill up and Oracle can't archive anything, the database just kind of locks dead and just says, hey, I'm not doing any more transactions. Doesn't give you an error message, just kind of sits there, say, hey, what do you want me to do? I can't really do anything. So every transaction I'll try to go through the database gets locked out. So how do I put my database into archive log mode? Well, there's a couple of steps that we have to go through. And I'm going to hop into my DOS window now. And you can see there's a query right off the bat. I left it on the screen to determine whether my database is in archive log mode or not. If I just select log mode from $V database, my existing database on my Windows server here is running in no archive log mode. So the first thing I want to do actually before I even look at changing it is I want to create the directory. I want to create the directory that's going to hold all my archive log files. So I'm going to go in here, and under normal circumstances you wouldn't put your archive log files on the same mount point that your actual database is on. That's obviously not very smart. If the disk crashes, you lose all your data files. You lose all your archives too. That doesn't do any good. But for this example, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to create a new directory. So I'm going to create this folder and call it ARCH. And so my ARCH, that's going to be the directory where I want to write all my data files. So there's a couple of parameters inside my database, and they all start with log underscore archive underscore. And you can see there's a whole bunch of different parameters out there. I can have a whole bunch of different destinations. I can have 31 different destinations if I want to write these archive log files all over the place. Normally you probably set up just one or two, but you can have this outrageous number if you really wanted to. So one of the things that we have to alter inside of our system, we obviously want log archive start to be set to true. So I'm going to have to change that. I want my destination to be where I'm going to write those files out. We just created that ARCH directory in my C mount point, so I'm going to want to do that. I'm going to want to set my destination state 1, because I obviously have to have at least one archive destination enabled. So I want to make sure that that's true. And you can see it is enabled right now. Since I'm not running in log archive mode, it's not doing anything. But I want to make sure that that guy is enabled to actually start doing that. And the fourth parameter that I want to worry about is the format. I have the ability to create what I want my file names to be. And you can see that there's this kind of cryptic way of specifying what the archive file looks like. What all this says here is the archive file names are going to start with the letters ARC, and then it's going to use these different parameters that are available to me. So %s is the log sequence number, then there's going to be an underscore, %r is the reset logs ID, then I'm going to have a period, and then I'm going to have %t at the end of it, which will show my thread number. I can change those around if I want. I'm certainly not limited to those, what Oracle has there. And as a matter of fact, I am going to go through and I'm going to change each one of those. So what are the first things I have to do? Well, I can't do these things in my database as it's actively up and running. I can set some of the parameters that are available to me, but I'm going to have to set those, and then I'm going to have to bounce my database and then turn it into archive log mode. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to alter system, and I'm going to set log archive start equal to true. I have the ability to set different parameters depending on if Oracle will allow me to do that. I can dynamically alter them live, where I can say, you know, scope equals memory, and say, okay, I want this to change instantaneously. I can say scope equals my SP file, my standard file that Oracle reads, my system parameter file that Oracle reads as it starts up, or I can say scope equals both. In this case, I'm going to make all the changes to my system parameter file. Then I'm going to restart the database, put it into archive log mode, and start it up. So I'm going to say scope equals sp file. Then I'm going to alter my destination 1 here. And again, because I'm lazy, I don't feel like typing it all out again. So I'm going to say destination 1 is equal to, and it has kind of a goofy way of specifying it. I have to say location equal to C colon backslash ARCH, close quotes. My destination state 1 is already enabled. I want to change that format around too. I really don't like that format. So I'm going to change log archive format equal to, and I'm going to give it the name of my instance, which in this case is sandbox underscore %d underscore %t underscore %s dot arc. Again, I can give it anything I want. If I give it that 3-letter combination, I'm always guaranteed of having a unique file name. So they'll all be sandbox, DTS, and all have ARC as the end there. So I have to put that in quotes. So let's put that like that. So my system's altered. So all of those things are in my system parameter file now. But if I want to read all that information, it's not just a question of shutting down my database and starting up again. So obviously, one of the things I do have to do is I have to do a shutdown immediate. And then once it's come back, I'm going to have to issue a couple of commands that say, okay, when you're going to start up the database, start it up in archive log mode, and then read all those parameters. I'm going to pause the video here as my database shuts down, and I'll come back as soon as it starts up again. Okay, my database is shut down. Now I have to issue a couple of commands to get the database into archive log mode. You would think it's easy enough just to say archive log start, put all the parameters in the init.aura file or system parameter file, but as usual, it's never as easy as it sounds, so there's a couple of things that we have to do. So our database is shut down, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to do the startup command, but we don't want to just do the startup command. We want to say startup mount exclusive. And what this does is we start up the database. It's let's see what's going on here. So you saw the error message that I had there earlier, and so you got to be real careful when you're working with this. Under 11G, log archive format must contain ST and R, and I didn't do that. I did DT and S, which are some of the old parameters that are out there. So when I tried to start up the database, it wouldn't let me do it because I obviously didn't have the right parameters in there. So you just got to be careful with what version of the database you're working with. With 11G release 2, log archive format must contain ST and R. So I've made that change. So now let's go back and continue on and put our database in true archive log mode. So I've made that change, so now I'm going to do a startup mount exclusive. And this is the command that I was using earlier. I still get that warning that's saying got a deprecated parameter as part of my init.aura. But I'm going to leave it in there for now. And the database is going to go through, and there's 3 different stages that you can start up your database in. No mount means that Oracle goes through and reads the init.aura file and allocates all the memory that's necessary, but doesn't look at any of the disk files. This is good for when you have to recover like your control file or something like that. Mount mode means it reads the init.aura file, looks at all of the data files, makes sure that they're all there, they're all where Oracle expects them to be, they're all in sync. This is good for when you need to recover your database. You can open up in mount mode, but the database isn't open yet. You can't do any transactions against it. Open is, traditional startup where Oracle goes through the three phases. Reads the init.aura, makes sure all of the data files and control files are there inside your database, and then once everything looks good, it goes up and it actually opens the database. So when we open the database here in mount mode, it's read the init.aura, it's looked at all the data files on our system, but it's not going to actively do any kind of transactions yet. So I've started up in mount mode, so what's the next thing I need to do? Well, I need to alter my database and put it in archive log mode. So even though I have specified log archive start equal to true in my system parameter file, the database still isn't in archive log mode until I actually issue that command. Once I issue that command, I'm actually in archive log mode, but it's really confusing. It seems like all you have to do is do log archive start equal to true, but that's not the case. You have to do that first, and then you actually have to issue the command to put it into archive log mode. I'm going to put in archive log start. And again, even though I said my log archive was enabled and it was started inside my parameter file, it's not really the case until I issue those commands. Then I can do an alter database open. And my database will now be in archive log mode as soon as it starts up here. And it's real easy to test that out. So as you can see, my database is open now, and I can go over to my C directory, and my archive directory doesn't have anything in it yet. Oracle obviously hasn't done any transactions and hasn't switched my online redo logs, so it hasn't generated any archive log files yet. So one of the things we can do is we can force Oracle to switch log files even though there's no transactions going through it there. I can say alter system switch log file. What that does is it forces Oracle to go through and switch the log file. So as soon as we leave the log file, Oracle should have kicked in archive log mode and copied one of the archive logs over to my archive directory. So if I go back to C archive, you can see there in fact is my archive file. There's the format that I gave it, sandbox, the unique numbers to make sure that we don't overwrite any files in the ARC extension. So if I issue that command again, there's my second file, and obviously virtually nothing happened in that file because I just did it right next to one another, but there's the next archive file that it created for me automatically. So this shows the importance of archive log mode inside your Oracle database, where the archive logs go. When we look at hot backups, we'll see why this is really important, and we'll look at using these archive log files to recover your database in case something goes wrong.